Part 29. Canon Fodder Strategy. Author, Juan ERWR. Chapter 282. Lily looked at these chats and was really speechless. The business can still be like this. No wonder this very busy man has always been ranked second on the wealth list. With his mind, being in second place is completely true. Well deserved. I am God dragged Lily to Yulau, skipped a lot of nonsense from the NPC, and directly clicked the proposal. A message popped up immediately on Lily's computer. I am God proposing to you. Do you agree or reject? After hesitating for a moment, Lily still didn't click reject in front of so many people. She clicked agree. System, congratulations to me, God, for marrying the ever-changing fairy. With the blessing of Yulau, a pair of lovers finally got married. The world seemed to be exploding. Because consumption reached a certain standard after getting married, red envelopes rained from the sky, and the scene suddenly became chaotic. Many people were frantically grabbing the red envelopes on the ground, fearing that they would be a step too late. Private chat Jian Shanmugzio said to you, are you doing this just to get Qi Li Chang? Private chat Jian Shanmugzio said to you, I am God and I am not easy to mess with. Don't let me get angry in the end and get myself involved instead. This is my advice to you as the eldest brother. From now on, I don't care about the matter. Private chat you said to Jian Shanmugzio, Li Chang? Who is Li Chang? Oh, Gu, he is just a part-time worker. Why do you think I like him? Only you can debase yourself and become a brother to him, not to mention when will you need to take care of my affairs. Lily originally felt that her scalp was numb, but when she saw Nkinlin's words, she instinctively became dissatisfied and typed them away. She could almost imagine the anger on Nkinlin's face at this time. Only then did I feel a little refreshed. The wedding lasted 2.5 hours. However, it took some time to fight the boss in the early stage. After collecting the red envelopes, I am God took Lily and left the marriage hall. Now that they were married in the game, Lily felt a little embarrassed. Just now she wanted to get angry with Nkinlin, and then she wanted to fulfill the wish of the original owner, so she agreed in a daze. The wedding was about to happen, Lily calmed down now. Just when I was about to find an excuse, I hurriedly logged off, but the private message I am God was sent over. Private chat I am God speaking to you, the game company will launch an offline face-to-face event around the middle of next month. The news officer has not notified this yet, but Lily knows it even if others don't know it, because there is such an event in the plot, and Lillian was brought back to Hong Kong by Anjulong at that time, so for this real person she did not participate in the meeting, and what she has always regretted happened to be this incident. After all, this meeting made Ming Zi Susu's reputation as the most beautiful woman in the world, which made her fall into isolation. In a helpless situation. The original owner was actually very unwilling. Lily had already made up her mind to participate in this real person meeting. Even if she doesn't want to show up in public, at least she can't let Ming Zisu be as glamorous as in the plot. But as soon as she said the words I am God, she hesitated about her original wish to participate. Private chat you said to me, God, then you want to participate? Private chat I am God saying to you, I won't participate. Lily was overjoyed. She was originally hesitant to attend this live meeting event, but she was afraid of meeting I am God. Now that he didn't want to participate, of course Lily decided to go. Private chat I am God saying to you, do you want to participate? Private chat you said to me, God, I will not participate in such boring activities. Lily said this categorically, but her mind began to think about what she would wear on the day of the real-life meeting. And Behi herself doesn't say what she looks like, but her skin is crystal clear and soft. Her figure is not the slim and petite popular nowadays, but a little plump, but she has long legs and a slim waist. The key is that she has a beautiful face. She does not look like the charming face of a good person. Even if she is dressed like a woman from a good family, she will never make people think that she is virtuous and virtuous. Her eyebrows are like scimitars, which makes her face look a bit delicate and fierce. Angry, after Lily came, apart from regular body care and facial care, she didn't put on makeup, let alone eyebrow shaping. She didn't like the sharp and flamboyant eyebrow shape of the original owner, and because of the love, she didn't do it right now. He doesn't look as gorgeous as the original owner, but his temperament is completely different. After asking this question, I am God on the other end, laughed softly. In the game, ever since Lily's character got married, Tian Mai from the Tianjiao Guild has been eyeing Ming's Yuzu, chasing her and killing her every day without even practicing, causing Cheng Feng to leave and the second young master of the Gu family to be level 1. After falling again and again, almost all the equipment has been lost. At this point, even if Gu Laikan had great ambitions when he first entered the game, it is almost worn out now. He didn't want to play anymore. After all, the equipment level was gone. Even if Kinlin was willing to support him, his friends always asked him to reach out to Kinlin again and again. Gu Laikan's self-esteem couldn't allow it. Therefore, he thought about not playing this game, but he couldn't let go of Mingzisu, because after Mingzisu was killed, it aroused the unwillingness and stubbornness in her heart, and she began to practice hard to level up. What I like about her is her stubbornness and strength, so I have no choice but to spend most of my time with her. Even though people sent to the mainland by Anjulong warned him several times at work, he also wanted to understand that Zisu couldn't let go of the game. After a long time, it was because of Kinlin's relationship and Gu Laikan himself. He is talented, and An's enterprise still values him, but now he has stopped thinking about formal affairs, and An's unknowingly falls behind on the tasks assigned to him, while Kinlin only cares about playing games. Gu Laikan didn't notice this difference, but Gu Laikan did, but his intention was that if he didn't stay here, he would have his own place, so he didn't take it to heart, and instead asked Qianlin mentioned it several times, but seeing that Kinlin didn't focus on work, he immediately stopped talking. Under such circumstances, a month passed in the blink of an eye, and Lily did not play the game again in the past 2 days. I have been playing games every day for 2 years. Now is the most critical time to fulfill the original owner's wish. Mingzisu appeared from reality and defeated Anbei. Even if he couldn't compare with her in terms of beauty, he would definitely surpass her in terms of temperament. As long as she doesn't steal the show at the real person meeting and make herself laughed at like Lillian in the original plot, Lily's goal will be achieved. Because Anbei was not in the mainland, she didn't attend the meeting, but she was said to be too ugly and afraid to come forward. These words were ignored by others, and Kinlin never explained them to her, so that Anbei was laughed at and looked down upon. Although this was just a virtual world, it still caused countless hurts to the girl's heart. Guild, elite member, sour, wife, are you going to the real person meeting held by Longzhan this time? The officials of Longzhan Tianxia have already drawn up the list of people to be invited this time. Except for top experts like I Am God who are among the invitations of Longzhan, who will provide him with air tickets, accommodation, and food money for free, almost all the experts including was invited. Almost 30 people among Tianjiao went there for free without paying any money, and those who exceeded the 50th place on the ranking list. You need to register at your own expense. This is also the meaning of Yalongzhan potentially encouraging everyone to consume, but many people are still willing to be taken advantage of. The competition in the rankings has been very fierce recently, and the bottom 10 on the list are almost changing every day. It seems that there are only a few days until the meeting. Although some people were not invited, they all wanted to go at their own expense. The registration list given by Longzhan's official now reached the point of nearly 1,000 people. Guild, ordinary member, Tian Mai, let me think about it. Lily has been in Tianjiao for a long time, and naturally knows that this couple should be acquaintances who have played together in other games, and have never met in person. Although the two of them usually call each other husband and wife, they are actually separated by one floor. It felt as if the window paper hadn't been pierced. Now she asked sourly. Although Tian Mai said she was considering it, Lily could see that she actually refused. Guild, elite member, sourly, go ahead. Seeing Sourlu like this, Lily thought of the two couples chasing Mingzi Isusu on weekdays. She chuckled and typed. Guild, Madam of the President, Variety Fairy, Mimi, Mingzi Isusu will also attend this live meeting. I heard that she is very beautiful in real life. Guild, Elder, was very ashamed. Wow, the goblin has spoken. Lily never speaks in the guild on weekdays. She speaks even less often than I am God. When she spoke now, many people lined up below to take screenshots and take photos. The corner of Lily's mouth twitched, and her sweet smile, but he became angry. Guild, ordinary member, Tian Mai, what? She's going to? How dare you call me beautiful? I don't even call myself beautiful. How dare she call me beautiful? Guild, ordinary member, Tian Mai, old sour, Zi Susu is going to go tomorrow, and I will go too. If I fall out of the 50 places, will you pay for my air tickets, food, and accommodation? Guild, elite member, sour, that's for sure. Private chat sourness said to you, thank you very much, goblin. The two of them had been in love for many years, and now they finally had the opportunity to meet in person. Naturally, they felt sour and happy, so they chatted privately with Lily for the first time. Lily smiled and said politely in reply. The meeting that Yin Long Zhan Tianxia prepared was outside a famous tourist scenic spot in the country. It was connected to the sea and was still far away from the capital city where Lily was located. It was necessary to prepare in advance before setting off. After joining the area, Lily came again. She was not included in the 50-person ranking list, so she was left far behind no matter what. She was not among the people invited for free by Long Zhan Tianxia, so she planned to go a few days in advance to have a good time there. To be continued. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Wan Erwr. Chapter 283. She has been playing games for 2 years before coming to this mission, staying at home every day. Now that the mission has finally come to an end, she wants to relax. Having booked the hotel and itinerary there a week in advance, Lily didn't play games for several days, so she packed her luggage and flew towards the seaside city. When I got off the plane, a salty and humid sea breeze blew in my face, accompanied by a heat wave, giving people a completely different sultry feeling from being in the imperial capital. Lily had been wearing a jumpsuit and an ankle-length skirt when she came all the way. She also wore a large silk scarf to ward off the cold. Now that it was getting warm, she put the scarf away and found her suitcase at the luggage area. After exiting the airport lobby, she couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief. The sea breeze blew on her body, causing her silk dress to flutter uncontrollably. At this moment, the crowd rushed out, and the taxi that was originally crowded outside the airport was robbed in a short time. Lily has been playing games at home for 2 years. Even when she goes out, she always has a driver at home. Now she realizes how tough it is to snatch taxis. Those people are like locusts passing through the border. The taxis that pass by will drive away in turn. The airport is already remote, and I'm afraid it will take a while to wait for a taxi to arrive. Want to go to a seaside hotel? A deep male voice rang behind her. This time, Long Zhan Tianxia was not stingy. He ordered an internationally renowned 5-star hotel for the top 50 players in the rankings, and Lily also she signed up for Long Zhan, but it was just her own money, and she did live in this same family. She heard someone talking and turned around to look. The man was too close to her. Turning her head, her face almost touched his chest. Lily subconsciously wanted to retreat, but he put his hand around her waist and pulled her back again. Stairs. He spoke with a Kyoto accent, not like someone from a seaside city. Lily nodded casually to thank him, and pushed him with her free hand, but failed to push him away. Thank you, she emphasized again, but this time she pushed him away. But her hand that was pushing on the man's chest was pulled into the palm of her hand and wrapped in it. Lily was suddenly covered, raised her head and squinted her eyes to look at this man. He was a man in his mid-20s. He is a young man with a tall figure. He wears a dark green plaid shirt on his upper body and white casual pants on his lower body. His legs look straight and slender. The collar of the shirt is unbuttoned, making his skin very white. Without any necklaces or other accessories, she looks very simple and refreshing. He has soft hair. The hair is of good quality, but because it is too dark, it shows a hint of eerie blue. Wearing sunglasses, his eyebrows cannot be seen clearly, but his strong nose bridge shows that this person is not that easy to get along with. His lips are pressed into a straight line, making him look thin, and coupled with his sharpened chin, he looks a bit ruthless. Judging from the half of his face exposed, he looked very handsome. Thank you, Lily shook her hand twice, but couldn't shake it off. She reached out to grab his hand, trying to free her hand from his grasp, but there was a man wearing a black suit and sunglasses. Smiling, she held her luggage in her hands. As soon as she got out of the airport, she dared to do this. Lily thought for a moment of the various frauds and abductions she saw on the news when she was doing modern tasks. The hair on her back almost stood up. At this moment, there were no free hands to grab my luggage, because both hands were held in the palms of the cold-looking man. In the sultry weather, his palms were not sweaty, and they were covered with fine calluses, which made them look more like lilies. Those hands were crystal clear and tender, as soft as if they were boneless. Are you going to the seaside hotel? The man's eyes were hidden under his sunglasses and his lips pursed, making his face look a bit stern. Lily's originally puffed chest shrank back because of his words. She was going to the seaside hotel. The airport was in a remote location right now, and I was afraid she would have to wait for at least half an hour for a taxi. It might be a matter of luck. She hesitated, and the man nodded at her, even though his eyes were blocked by his sunglasses. Finally, Lily instinctively felt that his eyes were falling on her at this moment. I'm also going to the seaside hotel, Longjiangxia. On the way he nodded at Lily, stretched out his hand to release her waist. Stand carefully. At first, Lily thought she had met a man who wanted to take advantage. Now she saw that he took his hand back politely, but she thought that she had been a little petty before. Then she saw that he turned around and walked towards the car parked not far away. Her luggage was also twisted. She hesitated for a moment, but after seeing the brand of the car clearly, she didn't hesitate anymore and walked over. It was an Audi costing nearly 1 million yuan. Although it was not a particularly expensive car, people who could afford such a car would not want to deceive her. What's more, I heard that this handsome young man was a leader in the world. Lily instinctively thought that some staff member had come over in advance, so she had no other doubts and walked over happily. The car door was pulled open. Lily thanked her and got in, but she saw Dai. The man wearing sunglasses also sat in the back. The two sat in the back together, and Lily felt a little embarrassed. The air conditioner was on in the car. The shawl she had just put on was put in her bag and put into the trunk of the car by the man wearing sunglasses. Now I had to cross my chest with my hands, feeling a little wary on the one hand, and a little cold on the other. Are you also a player in Dragon Wars? The handsome man calmly took off the sunglasses on his nose, folded them, put them in his shirt pocket, and turned to look at Lily. He has a pair of light eyebrows, with deep eyes under his eyebrows, and his eyelashes are long, curly, and very thick. Unlike the cold lower half of his face, he actually has such a pair of eyebrows that Lily couldn't help but look at him several times. I came here to play. Lily didn't want to admit it at first, but the handsome man then spread his arms and put them on the car seat, as if stretching his body, and put his hands behind Lily, as if she came into his range, but he seemed not to notice, and said casually, "The seaside hotel has almost been booked by Long's anti-anxious team." When Lily heard this, her face couldn't help but blush, and she laughed twice. She instinctively wanted to look out the window. Is that so? I don't even know about this when I play Dragon Wars. This was so false that she didn't believe it herself, but the handsome young man raised his eyebrows and did not refute. "What's your name in the game?" the man asked again. Lily hesitated a little this time. Her game name is already famous after the Dragon War World merger. After all, marrying such a famous I am god, it was impossible for her not to be noticed by others. Lily was deeply afraid that she would attract surprised looks from others when she said who she was next. She said cautiously, "Maybe you don't know me, what's your name?" "I am God." The man gently raised the corners of his mouth and uttered a name. Lily didn't understand it at first, and after a moment of silly laughter, the smile on her face suddenly froze and she couldn't stop it. "Go back, I am God." She took a deep breath, almost screamed, her eyes widened. "Are you God? Can't you say it?" The silly character in Nbehi's Bones now showed its influence on Lily. After Lily finished speaking, she secretly screamed, but she saw that the young man who just claimed to be God suddenly laughed softly. "Get up, why don't you come?" The unreasonable feeling that it was her made him ask questions about a woman he had never met for the first time. Unexpectedly, it was her. The feeling was very mysterious, but there were even more mysterious things waiting for him to verify later. "It's nothing, nothing." Lily secretly cursed herself for being stupid. The car drove towards the seaside hotel. She didn't dare to talk to me anymore. On the other side, as early as 2 hours ago, Mingzisu had already followed brother Gu Liken. The two appeared in the seaside hotel. She skipped a day of classes and took the earliest flight to the seaside city. Lily spent the day like a year and finally waited for the car to park in front of the seaside hotel. She happened to have already followed them. The two Gu brothers had been playing on the hotel's private beach all morning. Now they came back with their bare white feet and a pair of flip-flops on their hands, talking and laughing. The car stopped in front of the hotel. Lily had just taken the luggage the driver had given her, and before she could say thank you, she heard Nkinlin's voice. "Nonsense. Ziahe, why are you here too?" In the past 2 years, Lily rarely met and talked to Nkinlin. When they were playing games separately, in order to prevent her sister from getting entangled with Gu Liken for her own sake, Nkinlin bought a house outside. Living in An's home, Nkinlin rarely returned to An's home. When Nkinlin first saw her, he almost didn't recognize Lily. When he saw her getting out of a strange car, Nkinlin glanced at Gu Liken subconsciously. Then he frowned and shouted, "Why didn't you tell me when you came?" Lily looked back and saw Mingzisu standing next to him. Her long curly hair was not tied up and was blown gently by the sea breeze, bringing out an indescribable sense of youthful vitality and romance. Gu Liwan and Gu Liken and others stood beside her, one on the left and one on the right, both staring at Lily with wary expressions. Especially Gu Liken's face with undisguised disgust. This is the first time Lily has really seen him as in Lily after entering this plot. Lily is no stranger to him in the plot. With an extremely masculine appearance, sword-shaped eyebrows, and starry eyes, compared to the I am God Lily had just seen, Gu Liken's face was masculine, with a strong hormonal aura, and he had a standard muscular figure. People can't help but subconsciously take 2 steps back when they see it. To be continued. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Canon Fodder Strategy. Author, Juan ERWR. Chapter 284. Gu Liwan, on the other hand, seemed much more immature. He had a vigorous temperament, but his face was raw and baby-faced, which made people dare not confront him for a while because he thought Gu were two brothers. Among the three men, Enkinlin is the most handsome one. He is not as strong as Gu, but he has an innate aura of a rich kid. Although Gu has a calm temperament in front of him, but there is a hint of Jianghu air, not to mention Gu Liwan, he is just like a fledgling wild boy. In this way, Mingzisu was still looked down upon at first, and Lily felt a little disdainful of Mingzisu. But no matter how good Enkinlin's appearance was, his mind was full of nonsense, so it's no wonder that people didn't like him. What's wrong? The young man who had just come all the way also got out of the car. Now he put his hand on Lily's shoulder. When he heard the words "Ayahi" from Enkinlin's mouth, a clear smile appeared on his face. The smile made his otherwise cold face suddenly come alive. Master Lin, Enkinlin, who was originally frowning, suddenly exclaimed when he saw "I am God." He couldn't help but step forward and subconsciously stretched out his hand towards "I am God" to make preparations. The gesture of shaking hands with him, "Master Lin, this is..." Lily didn't know who Mr. Lin was, but after seeing Enkinlin's posture, she knew that "I am God" has a lot of background. What's more, the plot can force Njulong to marry off his daughter quickly. Thinking about it, he knew that he was a great and ruthless character. She subconsciously, I wanted to move my body to the side, but "I am God" pulled her into his arms. While he was combing Lily's hair affectionately, he asked, "Who are they?" The two of them had just met. At most I took a ride with him once. At this moment, "I am God," but I made a very intimate move between the two of them. Lily laughed dryly, tilted her head back, and shook her head without even looking at Enkinlin. "I do not recognize." "Nonsense," Enkinlin suddenly became anxious and said hurriedly, "I am her eldest brother, and Behi, please stop making nonsense, or I will call back to Hong Kong to tell my father." "Are you the ever-changing fairy?" Mingzisu, who was staring curiously at the side with a pair of round, innocent eyes that looked a bit pure like a cat's, suddenly fell on Lily. She curled her lips with an ugly expression, wrinkled her nose slightly and snorted, "So it was you who stole Huan Huan, but unfortunately he is mine, body and mind." She raised her chin proudly and shook the long maroon hair. This cute move not only softened the faces of the Gu brothers, but even Enkinlin's frown that had just been frowned by Lily couldn't help but relax. When Mingzisu called out the name of her game, Lily instinctively felt that "I was God," and a vague smile appeared at the corner of her mouth. Her scalp was numb and she glared at Mingzisu hatefully. He laughed coldly. "Who is this ant?" We already knew what Mingzisu looked like in Lily's plot, but it was probably the first time Mingzisu saw her. When she came to the seaside city, Mingzisu arranged for her roommate to, dyed her originally dark and straight long hair into millet color, and permed it into fluffy curls, which indeed increased her fashion. But because of this, Mingzisu's pure and natural temperament was due to her careful treatment. Her dress is a little more tacky like the general public. Although Lily is 3 years older than her, she has long black straight hair and a plain face now. She is originally young and is the best dress. Plus the skin on the upper body is well maintained, so the two of them look different. Lily just thought that Mingzisu used to call women she didn't like "ant," and now she was deliberately disgusted. She also called "ant" once. When she saw Mingzisu's face turning purple with anger, she couldn't help but cover her mouth. Laughed. Anyway, she has always left a pampered and willful image in front of Gu and others. At this time, she no longer needs Gu favor, so no matter what he thinks, Mingzisu is so angry that she trembles all over. And then he laughed, "Brother, your taste has really become worse and worse. Is it because you have been hanging out with unscrupulous people in the mainland for a long time, and you only like such dirty things?" Mingzisu was scolded by Lily again. She could tell that Lily was criticizing her. Mingzisu was originally a sharp-tongued person who refused to admit defeat. She was usually shy and timid. It was just protective. Now she was angry, especially when her love rival accused her of being inferior. In addition, Lily had just called her aunt, so she couldn't help but retort. "Auntie, who are you calling? I heard Brother Kinlan say that you are 3 years older than me, right? You have the nerve to call me auntie? I am a low-income person, who are you? You are not even as good as a low-income person. At least I have Huan by my side. What do you have? It's just that Huan doesn't want you." Lily won't feel bad when she hears this. Not to mention that Gu Liwan can't stimulate her. Even Gu Liken's influence on the original owner is not as strong as it was at the beginning. "With you? I gave it to you when I got tired of playing with it, and you still treat it like a treasure? Who cares about him? Is the eldest lady of my family worthy of her surname Gu?" Lily snorted coldly and saw that Zisu shaking with anger. He happily called the hotel waiter and handed over his suitcase. He looked at Mingzisu again and let out a disdainful chuckle. Then he nodded. She quickly took advantage of the momentum and ran away without looking back. The look I am God looking at her made Lily feel a little uneasy. And her arrogant attitude made Mingzisu feel humiliated, especially when the man who was being chased by Kinlan just now and called Mr. Lin also left together without looking back, which made the man who was left behind feel even more humiliated. Several people were extremely embarrassed. The people at the hotel sent Lily a gift and went back to the room. She had been on a plane for several hours and was a little tired now. She had just taken a shower and changed clothes and was about to sleep, when there was a knock on the door. Lily wrapped her hair and went out. After seeing the waiter pushing the salute outside, she opened the door. "I delivered Mr. Lin's box," the waiter left a sentence, as if in a hurry. Before Lily could react, he quickly smiled at Lily, turned around and ran away. When Lily came back to her senses, she saw a box in front of her. It must have been sent to the wrong room, but everyone had run away now, and she didn't know which room Mr. Lin lived in. So she had no intention of delivering it herself. She was just going to call room service later and have someone take it back. After getting through the phone and briefly explaining her requirements, Lily dried her hair and went to sleep without eating lunch. In the evening, the service staff of Longzhan Tianxia called to confirm Lily's identity and invited her to dine in the downstairs hall at 8 o'clock. Lily looked at the time and saw that it was almost 7 o'clock. Although she arrived at 8 o'clock, she arrived a minute early. You can always get it right when the clock is right. She got up, changed her clothes, tied her hair into a ponytail, put on some lip gloss to brighten her complexion, and hurried downstairs. She was hungry after sleeping all day. When Lily went out in a hurry, she didn't notice that there were some things that didn't belong to her in the 2 different cabinets where clothes were originally hung in the room. In the originally empty dressing room, there were some things that didn't belong to her. The hall downstairs was indeed crowded with people at the moment. Some people were holding guild signs, and they gathered together in 2s and 3s. The whole hall formed like many small groups. Although it was not really in the game, the differences between the camps were the difference is still very obvious. When she passed by the proud Iron Cavalry, Kinlan was lowering his head and laughing with Mingzisu. The two of them didn't know what they were talking about. When he felt someone passing by, Kinlan just raised his head and glanced at her, then lowered his head again. "Go down, as if you didn't see her." Lily didn't take it seriously and just smiled. After seeing Tianjiao's sign, she walked directly over there. Compared with other guilds, where up to 20 or 30 people came this time, the Tianjiao camp undoubtedly seemed much larger. It can be seen that the people here, regardless of gender, are almost all well dressed. From the appearance of everyone in the Tianjiao guild, it can also be seen from the equipment that most of the members in the association are from relatively wealthy families, and they usually have a forthright temperament when dealing with people. When everyone saw Lily coming, they all glanced at her. "I am God, who was sitting on the sofa, stood up and waved to Lily, "Come here." Ziyang, who is she, a young man with a diamond earring in his right ear, a pair of very black eyes, and even a dimple when he smiled, was sitting next to I Am God at the moment, and I saw him shouting at Lily. He waved and couldn't help but ask. The two people obviously recognized each other in reality. They were talking about something when Lily came over just now. I Am God did not speak. When he saw Lily walking towards him, he just stretched out his hand. Pulling Lily, he pointed at the young man who had just asked the question and said, "Lu Yi, it's called very busy in the game." He didn't mean to introduce Lily. After introducing very busy, he asked Lily, "Are you hungry?" Although they had been a couple in the game for a while, this was the first time the two met in real life. Lily felt that it was weird that he was so close for no reason, but she was not that disgusted at all. He knew the right balance very well, and sometimes even if it was a little offensive, he would back away before Lily felt bored. What's more, he was still a little guilty. "He didn't tell me that I was God when she was in the car, so she knew it now." His gestures were a little intimate, but he really didn't have the confidence to refuse. "I'm a little hungry, but didn't I say I can eat at 8 o'clock? Everyone who heard this couldn't help laughing. At this moment, everyone was guessing that Lily should be the ever-changing fairy in the game. At first, when everyone saw that I was God, they didn't dare to come over. Sitting next to her, a very charming woman in her mid-20s, about 25 or 6 years old, came over and introduced herself as Tian Mai. Gradually, more and more people started talking to Lily. At 8 o'clock, it was finally time to eat. To be continued. Canon Fodder Strategy. Author, Juan ERWR. Chapter 285. The person in charge sent by the game was a middle-aged man about 40 years old. After talking a few nonsense, he originally wanted to invite Lin Jiaoyang to come on stage to give a speech, but he refused and left with a look of regret. The meal was served. Lily was pulled by Lin Jiaoyang to sit next to him. She pursed her lips and smiled, then handed the wine glass in front of her that was supposed to contain juice to a man who was pouring wine. Her behavior made people stunned for a moment. Lin Jiaoyang stretched out his hand to support his chin and said nothing. Someone at the wine table saw Lily's behavior and booed twice. After the man who poured the wine poured half a cup for her, Lily stood up. "Ziahe, where are you going?" Tian Mai saw her behavior and stood up. "I'm going to propose a toast to Mingzi Isusu. This is Lily's last chance to complete the task. She wants Mingzi Isusu to no longer be in the limelight or gain fame in this game. She wants to let Mingzi Isusu never hold her head high in the game from now on. She no longer has the same status as in the game. She became a famous beauty in the Dragon War world during the real person meeting. From then on, she became famous. Finally, she became famous in the Dragon War world. Success and fame. Toast. Mingzi Isusu, I'm going to Tianmi's real name is Tian Tian." In the game, she and Mingzi Isusu also had a grudge because of the words onto. Now it seems that Bai He is in trouble. "Zi Isusu," she grinned, quickly took a cup and asked someone to pour wine, and followed Lily together. When Lin Jiaoyang saw these two people leaving, he naturally followed them. The proud cavalry's dinner table was not as lively as Tianjiao's, but because of a rare beauty like Ariaki's Isuzu, it still caused a sensation. When Lily came over with a wine glass, Mingzisu's face suddenly turned ugly. "What are you here for?" and Qinlin didn't wait for him to speak. Mingzisu puffed out her face. He stood up and said, "You are not welcome here. It's not your territory. Who needs your welcome?" Tian Mai didn't like Mingzisu in the game, and she didn't like Mingzisu in reality either, so she blocked her, but Lily raised Mingzisu to her. The cup in his hand came. "I don't want to argue with you about the past. Today I'm here to make it clear to you. I hope you won't pester my eldest brother again in the future. Not everyone can enter the door of our family. If you think you still have some backbone, just toast with me and swear, what I got is white wine, but if you can't drink it, you can just drink a drink. Lily said with disdain. Mingzisu couldn't bear the stimulation. She couldn't help but brought over the white wine cup that was placed in front of Gulikin next to her, and drank it all in one gulp regardless of his dissuasion. It made her burst into tears, but she refused to let Lily see the joke. I drank. Get out of here, the door of your home. I won't come in even if you invite me. Unexpectedly, the task was completed so easily. Lily secretly rejoiced. In that case, I hope you will do what you said. She touched her lips with wine and quickly stepped aside. Next, Tianhe Shanmai followed Lily's method and once again coaxed Mingzisu to drink a glass of white wine. After that, the two exchanged malicious looks and quickly returned to their seats. Just halfway through the meal, Guild Lily on the proud cavalry side noticed Qinlin and the other three quietly leaving the table. Mingzisu looks well behaved on the outside, but in fact she is a very bad drinker, and her alcohol capacity is not high, and she easily goes crazy when she gets drunk. Lily and Tianmai had just coaxed her to drink 2 glasses of wine, and within an hour at most, she would definitely get into trouble. This is the advantage of knowing the plot. Lily sat for a while and asked Lin Jiaoyang to use the name of I Am God to easily bring the topic to the proud cavalry, especially during the after-dinner activities of Dragon War. She exclaimed that her brother should still be in the room, drawing everyone's attention to Qinlin's disappearance. Why don't you make a call and ask the president of the Proud Iron Cavalry to come down? The person in charge of Longzhan Tianxia hesitated and asked such a question. Lily immediately shook her head boldly. No, that's my eldest brother. Why are you calling? I'll call him myself. After she said this, she lowered her head in embarrassment. It's just that my eldest brother seems a little angry with me. Can you please accompany me so that he doesn't want to do anything to me again? Angry. When Lily looked a little worried, many people playing the game couldn't help but patted their chests and agreed. Tian Tian stood in the crowd and covered her mouth and smiled, although she didn't know why Lily suddenly acted like this. But from the moment the two of them drank the Zi Susu wine, Tian Tianmai could feel that Lily was definitely having something in mind. Of course she was happy to see someone she disliked suffer misfortune, so she started to make a fuss. After such a fuss, a group of about 20 or 30 people took the elevator and arrived in front of Qinlin's room. Lily touched Chu had already asked for the room card at the front desk by virtue of her identity as Qinlin's sister, and opened the door to the concierge before anyone could knock on the door. The room was so lively that a group of men almost had nosebleeds. Mingzisu had already taken off her upper body clothes, leaving only her underwear hanging loosely on her chest. She sat on Gu Liken, while Gu Liwan beside her was knocked to the ground, and Qinlin also looked extremely embarrassed. Brother Li Chang, why are you seducing me? Obviously I am Huan's girlfriend, and in the game, you are all watching others bully me. Mingzisu's delicate voice came, and the group of people outside the door suddenly turned to stone. Lily stood in the crowd and saw such a scene. The breath in her heart that had been blocked for a long time suddenly became much smoother. Someone took out their mobile phones and started taking pictures. Only then did the men in the room come to their senses. Qinlin hurriedly took some clothes to put on Mingzisu, while Gu Liwan had already panicked. He was not old. He was not as calm as Qinlin. Even when a group of people chased him out, others were already panicking and sitting on the ground at a loss. Gu Liken was able to react, but he couldn't bear to push away the little goblin sitting on him, so he could only endure the torture of lust and glare hatefully at these annoying people at the door. After a wordless silence, Lily quickly put away her cell phone after taking the photo. He casually pulled someone to stand in front of him. Just hid behind. Lin Jiaoyang was speechless as he watched her hiding behind him. He did not expose her, but just pulled Lily back 2 steps, allowing those who wanted to watch the fun crowd in from behind. When Lily exited, she smiled and sent photos to Njulong, while listening to Mingzisu's shrill cries inside. This time you can no longer wear the cloak of your goddess. Mingzisu may not even have the face to play games again in the future, because of the glory she had in her previous life. Naturally, it is impossible to be here anymore, and I have fulfilled Lily Ann's wish to kill her in the game, which can be regarded as fulfilled. Although the methods were clumsy, these things had happened before without Beihi's help in the plot. The so-called gentleman's dispute between Nkinlin and the Gu brothers was brought to such an opportunity several months in advance by Beihi. Mingzisu's matter is equivalent to a side event in the Dragon War World event, making this gathering of players even more lively. Lily was in a good mood that night, so she drank several glasses of alcoholic juice drinks handed over by Lin Jiaoyang during the following activities. In the end, she was sent back to her room and slept in his arms all night without even knowing it. I didn't realize it until I woke up in the morning and opened my eyes. When Lily opened her eyes in a daze, Lin Jiayang's clear and beautiful face was not far away from her. It took her a while to realize that the two of them must have slept in the same bed last night. Subconsciously, she touched her waist and then her body. It seemed that there was nothing strange about her. Although Lily had not really experienced this kind of thing, she also knew that if someone did it to her while she was asleep, after something happened, she would definitely suffer from back pain, but unfortunately she didn't feel any discomfort at all. This shows that Lin Jiaoyang did not take advantage of others' danger last night. She breathed a sigh of relief at first, and wanted to wake up Lin Jiaoyang, but she didn't do it. While Lily was stunned, Lin Jiaoyang opened his eyes. His eyes seemed to be covered with a layer of starlight, very attractive. The early morning sunlight shone on his face through the thin curtains, making him originally his somewhat handsome and cold face seem to have a touch of fireworks. "Are you awake?" He had just woken up, and his voice was a little hazy and hoarse. He reached out and wrapped his arms around Lily's waist, and then took her rolled away body into his arms again. Sleep a little longer. His hand was still on Lily. The patting on the back was intimate, like an old couple who had known each other for many years, giving Lily a very strange sense of familiarity. "Who are you?" Lily forgot to struggle for a moment and asked this question subconsciously. The expression on Lin Jiayang's face paused, and his eyelids drooped to block the thoughts in his eyes. "I am God." After saying this, he moved his eyes to Lily's face. His eyes were unwavering, with a hint of a strange calmness. "But you don't seem to have told me that you are a changeable fairy." Lily was a little embarrassed at first, and then came to her senses. He wanted to use this method to divert the topic he just said, and couldn't help but say, "I think you are more than just God." Lin Jiayang's eyes were filled with a clear smile, but his face was indifferent. "Of course, I also have a nickname. My name is Tianzi's Haizi. I think you should be familiar with it." Hearing this, Lily almost jumped up. The proud man of heaven turned out to be the proud man of heaven. No wonder she thought I was God and came to her strangely. It turned out that the two of them knew each other when she entered the wrong area. "I promised you to wait for me at 8 o'clock. Do you know how many people are waiting to see me every day? Do you know how long I have been waiting for you?" Back then, a grizzly king made him notice Lily. With that little hope, I originally wanted to verify whether it was her as the two slowly began to interact in the future, but unfortunately, they were let go in the end. Lin Jiaoyang waited for many years, and he even thought that that person in this world would never appear again, but after 2 years of things going around, things were back to the original starting point, and she still fell into his hands. Lin Jiaoyang's words completely made Lily forget her previous doubts. It was already 2 years ago. At this time, there was no surprise of meeting old friends again. There was only a poor and frightened girl who suddenly became confused when facing Lin Jiaoyang. With such a sinister look on her face, she even forgot to ask Lin Jiaoyang why he slept in her bed. When Lily was stunned and speechless, there was a bang 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 knock on the door, and Lin Jiaoyang sat up. The knock on the door sounded like raindrops again. The force was stronger than before. Knocking hard and fast. "I'll open it." Seeing her wanting to get up, Lin Jiaoyang pushed her back onto the bed. He was still wearing his nightgown, but had no intention of changing it, so he went straight to open the door. And Qinlin originally he wanted to rush into the house like crazy, but was suddenly restrained by Lin Jiaoyang. After struggling for several times, he couldn't get out. He simply yelled, "And Bei. What nonsense are you talking about to Dad? You can explain to Dad right away, you." He cursed something that Hong Kong people often call young gangsters, which made Lin Jiaoyang laugh. He threw him to the ground, and before Qinlin could say anything else, he kicked him on the chest. Even though Lin Jiaoyang was only wearing the hotel's soft-soled slippers at the moment, Qinlin still felt a lot of pain after receiving this blow, and his face was very ugly. Yesterday, Lily took a photo of him, Mingzisu, and the Gu brothers. It was sent to An Zhulong's mobile phone, and it was said that he was collaborating with prostitutes. "Good morning." This morning, Zhulong called him and scolded him. At this time, I heard from the housekeeper of the An family that both parents were already on the plane to Kyoto. "I was killed by you this time. How could I ever be sorry for you?" And Qinlin could hear his father's tone being very angry. Although An Zhulong only had one son, and Qinlin's favorite son was not him since he was a child. It has even been revealed several times that the An family's property will be handed over to An Lily in the name of having shares in the future. Thinking of this, An Qinlin naturally guessed that Lily's move was intentional to obtain the An family's property, even if it would the person standing in front of him was Lin Jiaoyang, and he couldn't help it anymore. "My parents are in the mainland. You should explain to your parents right away that you were joking. Susu is just a person in the game and a friend. Otherwise I won't let you go." "I won't explain it. If you want to explain it yourself, I saw you whoring her." Lily sat up slowly and looked for her own change of clothes from the box. "It was either you whoring her or her. I prostituted you. Why are we just friends in the game, and you think I'm a fool?" And Qinlin was so angry that he vomited blood. Just as he was about to speak, Lin Jiaoyang directly lifted him up. "Master An, please sober up." After closing the door and shutting out An Qinlin's roar, Lily was ready to take a shower and leave the coastal city. Although she originally planned to stay for 2 more days, she met Lin Jiaoyang and An Zhulong and his wife. After arriving in the mainland, it was not a problem for her to stay at the seaside and not return to the capital. Anyway, her purpose of coming to the game's real-life meeting event had been achieved, so Lily was ready to leave now. But when she walked out of the hotel door with her suitcase, Lily saw Lin Jiaoyang waiting outside, so she took his car to the airport in depression, bought the nearest flight, and returned to An's home. And Zhulong and his wife had arrived in the mainland a few hours ago, and even took advantage of Lily's return to visit the Ming family. They humiliated Mingzisu's parents until they couldn't hold their heads up, and then they came back with great fanfare. When An's mother hit Mingzisu's parents with a check, almost all the old neighbors who had known the Ming family for more than 10 years knew about it. The Gu family also lived next door. When they heard that their 2 sons were among them, they almost didn't know it. He was so angry that he vomited blood, and Ming's father was immediately sent to the hospital. The matter became a big deal, so when An Qinlin almost got punched by Gu Liken in the morning, he thought of coming to seek revenge from Lily. "Mom, did you really take the check and ask the Ming family to hire more people to teach Mingzisu the rules?" Lily couldn't help but want to laugh. Throwing money at people often appears in the plot. At this moment, she didn't expect her real eye also heard it once. After returning home, Lily heard Anne's mother pulling her to tell her about it, and she couldn't help laughing. "Of course, but I also saw that the couple from the Ming family have a bad temper, and there is still a trace of sourness in their bones, so I took money to humiliate them. They wouldn't want it anyway, otherwise you really think I would? Are you stupid enough to give them money?" Anne's mother flipped up her hair. She was not the kind of empty-headed person who could marry a businessman like Njulong. No matter how stupid she was, the couple should have learned a lesson over the decades. It's half a trick, but it's just the Chi Ming family. How can I really give them money, and don't look at their reasons? When Lily heard this, she couldn't help laughing again. On the other end, Njulong chatted with Lin Jiaoyang, who had sent Lily back all the way, and looked at Lily with a somewhat strange look. Anne's mother looked at her daughter kindly, and still said that she had lost weight here and lost weight there. This mother did not appear many times in the plot, and did not appear often in Lily's memory, but in this life, she was shockingly good. It was as if Anne's mother was asked to choose between her and Kinlin. She would choose herself without hesitation. This made Lily feel weird, and because of this, when Njulong asked her to return to Hong Kong, with her mother's sincere treatment, Lily really couldn't bear to be cold to her, so she stayed with her for a while longer. The relationship between the two women is much better than in the plot. This time Njulong and his wife came to the mainland and actually stayed there. He had no intention of leaving again. And Kinlin was being watched under their noses. He was in jail every day. He couldn't go to school or sneak out to play with the Gu brothers. He could only accompany Njulong to meet guests all day long. Lily was gloating about his misfortune. Her marriage was also decided by Njulong. No surprise, she was engaged to Lin Jiaoyang, and the engagement took place while Njulong and Njulong were still in the mainland. Both parties seemed to be afraid that the other party would regret it, so they quickly settled down. The wedding is scheduled for half a year. When Bei couldn't resist, she took the time to play a game. I heard that Lin Jiaoyang had left the guild to very busy management. Recently, he was no longer online. There were gradually more new players in the game, and the great masters behind him were also chasing after her. As time goes by, there is no more news about Ming Zi Susu, but according to the game forum, she seems to have had enough of a bad reputation on campus, and the story of seducing the Gu brothers has been spread everywhere. Even though she is already a junior, the school still persuaded her to drop out. Once she left, no one heard from her again, but she definitely lost her glory in the game. And Bei's wish to kill Ming Zisu in the game, although not as direct and brutal as she imagined, was solved by Lily in another way. Without Ming Zisu, Gu Liken and others naturally, they didn't play anymore, and Kinlin also couldn't play the game anymore because Njulong kept a close eye on him. The members of the Proud Cavalry quickly left and dispersed. Later, in the area in the past plot, the Great Guild, which had become so popular, just disappeared and disintegrated. Without the presence of these people, Lily naturally had no need to play anymore. She uninstalled Dragon War World from her computer. After cleaning it up, the computer returned to the way it looked 2 years ago before these games were downloaded. And Lily breathed a sigh of relief as if she had fulfilled some wish. Half a month later, Lily packed up her passport and other things and secretly returned to Hong Kong. It was impossible for her to marry Lin Jiaoyang, because she had never thought about getting married, not to mention that the original owner's wish was to get Lin Jiaoyang and then dump him. Now I can be regarded as fulfilling the wish of the original owner. But at the Hong Kong airport, the young man who was standing outside a car and reading some documents raised his head and glanced at her, and suddenly he smiled, as if he had seen her before many years ago. The familiarity felt like returning to the day when I first entered the game. I was controlling the ever-changing ferry, but I didn't avoid the favored man in any way. Lin Jiaoyang was standing in front of the car, opening the door and waiting for her to get in. This method was just like the way he used his rabbit skin to coax him into working for him, but now he just changed the method. Lily actually figured out later that the Grizzly Bear King was one of the weirdest bosses in the Dragon Wars world. It would drop very good equipment in the early stage, but someone had to wake it up from hibernation and receive its fatal blow. After hitting it, the remaining people will kill it. She had been deliberately letting herself forget the past, but now she remembered everything she should and shouldn't have thought about. She even thought of Li Yangzi in the space for no reason, and thought of the one who was caught by the forbidden curse in the plot of Dahai. But the silent young man turned his head and smiled at her. Although they were different people with different appearances and names, they gave her the same feeling at this moment, which made her miss even more the man in the space who didn't talk much, but had given her a lot of help. To be continued. P.S. Big update of 6,000 words, 2 updates in 1. It's today's temporary update and tomorrow's promised update. After the double update, there will only be 2 updates left tomorrow. Everyone must come back to complain that I haven't added any more updates because I have made up for the 4th update today, ha 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 ha. I don't want to whet everyone's appetite, I am a good person, please send me a small pink ticket instead of the Leifang card. Looking for a guaranteed monthly ticket for next month. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Juan ERWR. Chapter 286. When Lily returned to the starry sky, she still felt the weirdness of this mission. Lin Jiaoyang finally made an agreement with her and married her. The two seemed to be friends, giving her the feeling that he was protecting her to complete the mission. It was just when Lily was curious about him, but no matter how long the mission lasted, it would eventually come to an end. She still came back. Returning to the starry sky where she felt safe from the beginning, Lily felt a little regretful for the first time. Gender, female, variable. Name, Lily. Age, 21. Intelligence, 71, out of 100. Appearance, 72, out of 100. Physical strength, 64, 100 full points. Force, 36, out of 100 points. Spirit, 39, out of 100 points. Reputation, 23, out of 100 points. Skills, 9 Yang Manual, Heaven and Earth Gate Tao Te Ching, Southern Territory Gu Technique. Specialties, Intermediate Cooking Skills, Advanced Acting Skills, 5 Elements, and Bagua, Slight Dabbling. Charisma, 40, out of 100. Collection, Corpse King's Love, Saint's Blessing, Angel's Heart, Dragon King's Promise, Fox's Charm, Mother's Love Like a Mountain. Before Lily could catch her breath, her information appeared in the starry sky. Lily took a look and found that unlike previous missions where her attribute values increased significantly, this time her attribute values did not increase much, except for intelligence. Apart from the increase in appearance, only mental strength has been increased the most. He is almost 40. It seems that this mission is just for fun because there is no danger. Although it is simpler than the previous mission, it is still the same. The rewards are also much less. Before she had time to think about it, the sound of mission transmission sounded again. The last thought in Lily's mind while she was drowsy. I just hope that Li Yangzi will come back soon. My queen, please relax. Your Majesty still has your heart in mind. A gentle female voice held Lily's hand. Saying these words in her ears over and over again, Lily gradually calmed down and fell into a slumber with peace of mind. The plot came to mind, and this time Lily experienced almost the whole life in Fang Beihe's plot in the way of dreaming. Fang Beihe was born in the Prime Minister's family of the Great Chu dynasty. As the Prime Minister's legitimate daughter, she was one person outnumbered by 10,000 people. She had been beautiful and docile since she was a child. She was spotted by the late emperor when she was 15 or 16 years old. She was appointed as the crown princess to Emperor Shengjing, who was still the crown prince at the time. After the death of the late emperor, she naturally became the queen, and she continued to do so until later. Shengjing is just the reign name of Hua Yuanan. He ascended the throne at the age of 23 and ruled well. Although he had a cold personality, he was still a good emperor. Fang Beihe loved him to the core since she married him. It is a pity that Hua Yuanan did not love her. Hua Yuanan has a cold nature. As an emperor, his character allows him to judge issues rationally. It is beneficial to the country and the people, but as a man, he is mean and ungrateful. He has been married to Fang Bai for 20 years, but 20 years later he may not even be able to call his wife the queen's name. In his heart, he never paid attention to any other woman except the world. It was not until 20 years later that he accidentally saw his daughter hiding in the dark that he had not seen for many years, and his heart came to life. Earlier, there was a beautiful concubine in the palace. She had a voice like an oriole. After Hua Yuan favored her once, he fell in love with her and named her Oriole concubine. However, after doting on her for a while, Hua Yuan and ruthlessly threw people aside. When concubine Li was favored, many people naturally hated her. After she fell out of favor, she was quickly squeezed into the cold palace. It's just that concubine Li was gentle and kind-hearted. Like every woman in the palace, she loved Hua Yuan deeply. Although she felt sad after being ignored by him, she didn't hate him. Especially half a month later, she felt that now that she is pregnant with a child, she misses Hua Yuan even more. After 10 months of pregnancy, concubine Li gave birth to a beautiful daughter. The most important thing is that she has a pair of light blue eyes exactly like Hua Yuan. The ancestors of the Great Chu dynasty had foreign blood. The most important reason why Hua Yuan was able to sit on the throne was that he had a pair of purple eyes exactly like the late emperor. Concubine Li was ecstatic after giving birth to a daughter with light blue eyes. Especially when she saw her daughter growing up day by day, her appearance becoming as beautiful as a city, she felt even more sad in her heart. She knew that in this palace, her daughter having such peerless beauty was a curse rather than a blessing. When she was favored, she conquered a nun beside her. Mammy's heart, this mama has been in the palace for many years and knows the seriousness of the matter. Therefore, after discussing with her, concubine Li changed her daughter's appearance and taught her from an early age not to open her eyes to see people. When you have to see someone, you lower your eyelids and block the secret of your eyes. 15 years later, a handsome and extraordinary general emerged from the Chu dynasty. He had outstanding appearance and extraordinary martial arts. After making military exploits, when he entered the palace one time, he saw the blue man who was being bullied. A beautiful princess with beautiful eyes, Hua Yuan asked the emperor to marry her, and Hua Yuan agreed. However, after his daughter got married, he accidentally discovered that the general was in the palace with the daughter he had not seen for more than 10 years. While enjoying themselves in the garden, he found himself reacting to his daughter's delicate voice and perfect figure, and then wanted to get her by force. He resorted to tricks to get the general to go on an expedition, and then summoned his daughter into the palace because he missed her. Hua Yuan was shocked when he discovered that his little daughter had a pair of eyes exactly like his own. He found himself cold and lonely. For the first time in decades, his heart began to feel violent vibrations. He used means to take over his daughter's body, and slowly used this method to make her body forget him, thus slowly gaining her heart. After the general came back, he was naturally heartbroken when he faced his wife being forcibly taken away from him. More importantly, Hua Yuan had the desire to make this little daughter the imperial concubine. There is an unwritten rule in the Chu dynasty, that is, if the queen is alive, the favored concubine can be named a concubine, but she can never be named an imperial concubine. The position of imperial concubine can only exist when the queen is dead. In the past, Fang Bei could turn a blind eye to Hua Yuan's doting on other women in the palace, but this time she couldn't help it, because she had been with Hua Yuan for 20 years and knew his character. This was to pave the way for the imperial concubine. If she could endure it any longer, she might suddenly die of illness waiting for her. She began to want to plead with Hua Yuan. After all, they had been married for 20 years, and even if Hua Yuan didn't like her anymore, they had given birth to a son, but Hua Yuan was not willing to see her at all. Fang Lily inadvertently when they met him by chance, he couldn't even recognize his married couple. Fang Bei was resentful when she found out that the imperial concubine he adopted turned out to be Hua Yuanen's biological daughter, especially after hearing that when he coaxed the imperial concubine, saying that he would make her queen and put their son on the throne, he finally collapsed. Fang Bei thought of joining forces with her son to rebel, but in the end she was not only unable to the rebellion was successful, but was suppressed by Hua Yuanen with bloody means. In the end, he took this opportunity to uproot the Fang family. Regardless of Prime Minister Fang's help when he came to the throne, hundreds of people in the Fang family the whole family was copied and beheaded. Fang Bei felt very unwilling to accept that the man she had loved for more than 10 years and who had given birth to a son with him treated her so ruthlessly in the end, but in the end Hua Yuanen was so ruthless to her, not only by killing her, she also strangled her only son. She wanted Hua Yuanen to die together with the daughter he loved so much, and she wanted her son to live well. Lily opened her eyes and sighed. The palace was eerily quiet. Green smoke rose from the cauldron on the incense table, and there was a quiet fragrance in the room. 2 palace servants carefully knelt beside her bed and took 2 banana fans to gently blow her hands. Fanning, not even the sound of cicadas could be heard outside, it was so quiet and eerie. The Empress is awake, but do you want to twist her handkerchief to cleanse her face? Seeing Bei wake up, one of the palace servants' eyes lit up, and he asked cautiously, I asked you to prepare warm water. Fang Bei just woke up crying. It was simply because the emperor had favored another palace member recently, but he had not set foot in her palace for more than 10 years. If it weren't for her, she would still have the title of queen. If it weren't for her, she would still have a queen. Her father, who held a high position, might have been trampled to pieces in this cannibal palace by now. Go Lily waved her hand. Her body was severely damaged. It looked intact on the outside, but actually it was weak on the inside. Even if she got up after lying down for a while, she was still dizzy, except for the people around her. Servant, her husband didn't care at all. When Lily thought of this, a sense of desolation arose in her heart, along with a sense of resentment, which made her involuntarily clenched her palms tightly. But these emotions did not belong to her, so Lily took a few deep breaths and let go of her hand. In the eyes of the palace people, her behavior seemed like she was jealous of other concubines, so they were not surprised at all. While washing her face, Lily recalled the direction of the plot at this time. It should be when Hua Yuanen's sweetheart Hua Zai was 15 years old, no later than half a month later, the general who would later become the Green Cloud. He Liangzi will come to Beijing. What is worth noting is that in addition to having foreign blood and being unforgettably handsome, the most important thing is that his love for Hua Zai is not just pure love that transcends the barriers of time and the boundaries of life. In the plot, the 2 people were originally lovers who died in their previous life. He Liangzi fell in love with Hua Zai in his previous life so much that he followed her again in this life. With the memories of his previous life, he finally got Hua Zai. After knowing this, he thought that his love would be perfect when he had his sweet wife and lover in his arms. However, because of Hua Yuanen's appearance, his love in both lives ended in vain. To be honest, this story is not perfect. Lily was miserable, but no matter how Lily thought about it at the moment, she felt that He Liangzi was much worse than herself. To be continued. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Wan Erwr. Chapter 287. Now that I have figured it out, please don't interfere with whoever the Emperor likes to favor. Just let them go their own way. After sorting out the complicated relationships between the characters in her mind, Lily calmly told the palace people, with surprised and somewhat frightened eyes, they began to prepare to welcome the return of General Helion. More than 10 days passed in a flash, and Lily was not idle during these 10 days. Apart from seeing the eldest Prince Huaidu, who was just 15 years old after Fang Lily left him, every day, the rest of the time was except occasionally when meeting the concubines in the palace, most of the time was still spent on practicing martial arts. This time, Hua Yuanan was a martial arts master. It was less than a year before Fang Beihe and his family were executed, although in this year Lily may not be able to practice martial arts very well within that time, but as long as her body becomes a little more flexible and she no longer is as weak as she is now, breathing heavily after walking a few steps, Lily will be satisfied. Half a month later, Heliangziu's return from victory indeed caused an uproar in the Chu dynasty. Hua Yuanan and Long Yan were overjoyed and hosted a banquet in honor of the general who had made great contributions to the Chu dynasty. Lily also attended the banquet, and at this banquet, she also saw the infatuation in the plot. The unlucky man Heliangziu. In the previous life, Heliangziu and Huazii only let Heliangziu accidentally let it slip once, and what kind of scene these two people were in their previous life, Lily didn't know. Now let's look at this big man. The young and handsome general of the Chu dynasty is indeed a sight to behold. Heliangziu was about 20 years old, with a snow-white complexion, which was worthy of attention. It's his thick and neat eyebrows and his extremely long eyebrows. Upturned red and phoenix eyes. His eyes seemed to be filled with sadness, and the inexplicable feeling made it easy for people to feel pity for him. He is tall and slender, with a slightly pointed chin, a somewhat small face, and a more feminine appearance. If it weren't for the high-tied hair that gave him a somewhat heroic look, it would have been difficult to identify his gender at first glance. At the celebration banquet held in his honor today, he wore a silver official robe, and the jade belt around his waist made his waist even more slender. Such an appearance not only made Lily look at him several times, but also many concubines and officials' female relatives were waiting to see him, but he just sat there with a touch of sadness on his body, a lively and prosperous palace banquet. It didn't make his originally frowning eyebrows relax a bit, making him look very melancholy, which made his already outstanding appearance even more outstanding. Ai Ching has made great contributions. I wonder what kind of reward Ai Ching wants. Hua Yuanan stood up and asked Heliangziu with a smile. Ai Ching has made such a great contribution, the titles, and money are all rolling in, as long as Heliangziu still has brains. He would not overestimate his ability to ask Hua Yuanan for something that he could not get, so after Hua Yuanan asked this question himself, Heliangziu could almost have his wish come true. Everyone was staring at Heliangziu, but Lily knew what he wanted. He stood up, walked out of the queue and bowed deeply to Hua Yuanan. I beg the Emperor to grant you permission. I want to ask for the Emperor's favor, Pearl, 16th Princess. Heliangziu is in his early 20s, but he has never been married. He has been away fighting in the past few years. Apart from looking for the person he cared about in his previous life, he doesn't care about other women at all. But today, God is so pitiful that he has allowed him to, after meeting the woman he had been looking for in his life, Heliangziu naturally proposed to marry Hezii. When they heard about a 16th princess, everyone was confused as a monk. Hua Yuanan just celebrated his 38th birthday this year and was in the prime of life. Because he practiced martial arts all year round and had strong physical strength, he never treated him badly in the harem. Every 3 he has a large number of beauties since he was in his 20s. From the time he ascended the throne in his 20s, he has 13 sons and 15 daughters, all of which are recorded in the records. But when a 16th princess appeared, it is really unbearable. I was a little suspicious. Does the queen know about these 16 princesses? In front of everyone, Hua Yuanan couldn't lose face because he didn't know about the 16th princesses, so he asked Lily in a cold voice without looking back. In his eyes, Fang Beihe, who has been married to him for 20 years, only has the name of the queen, as if that is her original name. He has never taken a close look at her appearance, let alone care about her surname. Lily is now instinctively, she felt a sharp pain in her heart, and then waves of hatred filled her heart. She endured it for several times before suppressing the original owner's emotions, and said softly, "Does the Emperor still remember concubine Li who was thrown into the cold palace 15 years ago? She gave birth to the 16th princess for the Emperor and named her Huazai." When Lily said this, Hua Yuanan couldn't help but a flash of light in his eyes. A look of boredom. This group of women is like this. When he asked questions, they were still thinking about how to compete for favor, right? After making him wait for a long time, he didn't ask Lily why she knew such a thing. After all, if he asked and Lily couldn't answer, it would mean that she, the queen, was not fulfilling her responsibilities. In Hua Yuanan's eyes, if Lily could answer his question, it was her duty. If she couldn't, she would have failed in her duty. It was because the original owner Fang Lily failed to answer his question that Hua Yuanan sent her chamberlain after she returned to her palace. After being humiliated, I knelt down in front of the chamberlain and listened to him read the emperor's instructions for a whole hour. "Do you want to marry concubine Li's daughter, my 16th princess?" Although Hua Yuanan was a little impatient with Lily at this time, he naturally did not prepare to send a servant to scold her like in the plot. He just had a more impression of Lily. It was not good. He didn't even look at Lily again from the corner of his eye, and directly said to Helianqiu, "In this case, then, it will be as you wish." The marriage was settled just like in the plot. Concubine Li, who had disappeared from the palace for many years, has recently become famous again because of her superiority to her daughter. After all, her daughter is married to a very promising general from the Chu dynasty. It can be seen that in the future, the 16 princesses may regain Hua Yuanan's favor because of her husband's relationship. Lily ordered a few things as dowry, and found someone else to move concubine Li to a new palace. Anyway, what she took was not her own money, but Hua Yuanan's silver, but what she gained was her own virtuous character. Good reputation. Huazai happily married into General Helian's mansion. When she entered the palace to express her gratitude the next day, Lily, as the queen, was qualified to meet Hua Yuanan together. At that time, she felt something was not right. Huazai, who had washed away the layer of disguise on her face, looked extremely beautiful. She didn't look like a 15-year-old flower waiting to bloom, but rather like a peach blossom that had reached its peak of beauty, with snow-white skin. She was pink and tender, and her eyes were as blue as the sea. When Yingying raised her head, she still had the shyness of a new wife on her face. Hua Yuanan, who was used to seeing so many beauties, could not help but widen her eyes. Eyes and breath stopped for a moment. General Helian is really discerning. He plucked the most cherished flower in the emperor's heart in one fell swoop. Lily turned around and saw Hua Yuanan's strange behavior. He even crossed his legs to cover up his confusion. Something strange happened to his body. At this moment, his eyes were completely focused on Huazai. A strange look flashed in his eyes, which looked terrifying. Lily only glanced at him and turned her face away in disgust. Come, Huazai is naive and ignorant. She has the innocence of a girl and the tenderness of a young woman. In addition, because it is the first time to meet her father, she is inevitably a little excited. At this moment, the petite her body trembled slightly, like a newborn baby swallow, which was endearing. Helianxiu stared at her tenderly, his eyes never leaving her face for a moment. "Thank you, Queen, for the compliment," Huazai inherited concubine Li's moving voice. As soon as she finished speaking, Hua Yuanan's eyes suddenly changed color, and her eyes became deeper. His palms almost shook uncontrollably. "Okay, you should go and see concubine Li earlier. She is waiting." "Do you agree, Your Majesty?" Hua Yuanan felt a little unhappy when he heard Lily's words. He turned to look at Lily coldly. He came over and stared at Lily with squinted eyes in warning, but he really couldn't think of any way to refuse Lily's proposal at this moment, so he said coldly, "The queen is right, you can go." The moment Hwazai appeared, it was like a ray of sunshine shining into his heart, making him eager to catch Hwazai, but the remaining reason in his heart made Hwayuan hold back the thought. Feeling eager, he snorted coldly and put his arms behind his back, striding out without looking back. I, did I make my father unhappy? Xiaolang, Xiaolang. Huazai was as anxious as a frightened quail. She leaned timidly into Heliangziu's arms, trembling. Seeking comfort, I didn't do anything. She even shook her shoulders and sniffed twice as she spoke. She looked weak and a little pitiful. She stared at Heliangziu with tears in her eyes, her pale and beautiful little face looking extraordinarily eye-catching. If Lily was not here at this moment, Heliangziu would have kissed her without hesitation. However, since Lily was still there, he just held his wife in his arms like a treasure, and gently kissed her. Coaxed up. Lily was speechless as she looked at the couple clinging to each other as if there was no one around. She couldn't help but twitch the corner of her mouth. Heliangziu must not understand that showing affection will break up quickly. Hua Yuanan has already set his sights on it. Huazai, he doesn't care about secular etiquette, as long as he likes something, he will use all means to get it. Thinking of this, no matter how hard-hearted Lily is, she can't help but sympathize with Heliangziu, and she coughs lightly after 2 calls. Huazai blushed with embarrassment and sat upright from Heliangziu's arms. She lowered her head and played with her wide sleeves. She didn't even dare to raise her head. Her earlobes were so red that they were bleeding. To be continued. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Wan Erwr. Chapter 288. Your Majesty, Meng Lang, has behaved unbecomingly in front of the Queen. Please forgive me. Heliangziu couldn't bear to look at Huazai's shy appearance, so he quickly begged Lily. After receiving Lily's forgiveness, he accepted. Zhuo Huazai left Lily's palace. The Queen seems to be easy to talk to. I don't know if it's true or not. But Mother Meng told me that everyone in the palace can act. Xiaolang, do you think I should believe it? After everyone had gone far away, Huazai's innocent and charming voice sounded again. The face of the maid next to Lily suddenly turned dark, and she couldn't help but said, "This 16th princess is really, doesn't she know what to say and what not to say in the palace?" Lily didn't speak, she just looked down at her armor and smiled. She doesn't have too many chips now. She just hopes that Heliangziu won't be too stupid. If she can cooperate with him, maybe the two of them can win. After all, she is weak now. Although Prime Minister Fang loves his daughter, but this person he has a very pedantic personality. Unless he actually sees it with his own eyes and believes that Hua Yuanan wants to kill the Fang family because of Huazai, he will never dare to have the idea of rebellion. And Fang Bei he was too cowardly at the beginning and had no power at all. Although he had a son who was the eldest prince, what made Fang Bei he feel helpless was that the son had no intention of becoming an emperor at all. In the plot, Fang Bei he was, however, after Lily came to this plot, she felt that Huai didn't want to be the emperor, so it would not be difficult to save his life. After meeting concubine Li, Heliangziu and Huazai couldn't hold it back, and they rolled into a ball in the imperial garden. It happened to be seen by a distraught Hua Yuanan. He was originally thinking of his daughter's blue eyes and beautiful face. After seeing Huazai's youthful body, he felt more and more that he had something different about Huazai. Half a month later, the newly married Heliangziu received Hua Yuanan's order for him to go on another expedition. When Heliangziu entered the palace to pay his respects, Bei he sent someone to think of a way to slip a piece of paper asking him to meet. It's in his hand. But Heliangziu didn't know whether he didn't see it or did see it. He didn't come over. Instead, he chose to pack his bags and order troops to go on the expedition 2 days later. As soon as he left, Hua Yuanan brought his daughter back to the palace in the name of missing her daughter and protecting his wife for General Helian. Your Majesty, after the princess was brought into the palace, she heard news from people around the emperor, and she was taken directly into the Qinghua Palace. The eldest maid next to the original owner knelt down in front of Lily and told the news she had just learned. Lily said it again. This thing was so weird that even the servants saw it. She didn't know how Hua Yuanan concealed it in the plot. Maybe it was just because everyone was afraid of his ruthlessness. They didn't dare to mention this matter, and everyone just pretended to be deaf and dumb. Lily smiled coldly, thought about it and beckoned, "Take out the sign to comfort me, make the sign for concubine Li, hang it up again, and invite concubine Li to come to my palace for a little gathering." Hua Yuanan's heart was devoted to his daughter at this time, but as a veteran in love, his desire to get Hua Ziyi's heart was not just about getting her body. In the end, he got Hua Ziyi by force, and then he won her heart and made her willingly give up her lover of 2 lives to stay with him. Fang Bei's wish is to make Hua Yuanan suffer. In addition to starting with his body and making him uncomfortable, the most important thing is to make his heart feel uncomfortable. Lily has a way to deal with the physical discomfort, but it is difficult to do it. As the mother of a country, although she is not very favored, it is not very convenient for her to do things, so Lily is going to start by hurting Hua Yuan's kindness, and the only one he cares about is Hua Ziyi. For several days, Hua Yuanan rested in Hua Ziyi's palace, and there was no news about where he rested in the harem. Such a thing had never happened to Hua Yuanan before, for 2 months in a row. Not stopping at the palace concubines, not only the concubines were shocked by this incident, but even the queen mother, who had not asked about it for a long time, was also shocked and called Lily to ask. It's just that Queen Lily has always had little status in the harem. The queen mother said a few words and saw that she couldn't answer, so she had to wave her back in boredom. Concubine Li had been waiting for Lily for a long time in the palace. Recently, Lily has not been that annoying person who alienated the relationship between Hua Yuanan and his daughter. She just kept putting concubine Li's sign at the front every day, and asked people to send news to concubine Li's palace every day, saying that she was Hua Yuan and ordered her to serve as his bedmate. Concubine Li had been clinging to the cold palace for many years, thinking that she would only watch her daughter grow up in her life and never have other thoughts. However, she was recently provoked by Lily and she became a little excited again. "The Empress has summoned me, but what's the matter?" Concubine Li recently treated her as a mother-in-law because her daughter was favored, and treated her a little better than before, giving her a lot of rewards every day. When she entered Concubine Li's palace, Lily would make trouble for her every time, causing the entire harem to think that Concubine Li was very favored recently. She herself also felt as if she was being held in the palm of the emperor's hand, so she was heartbroken. It was inevitable that her heart would be a little wandering. Although she had not seen the emperor for a long time, because the rewards had not stopped, Concubine Li always thought that the emperor actually loved her. "I have summoned Concubine Li to come here. It is true that we have something to discuss." Lily patted Concubine Li's hand. Seeing that she looked a little uneasy, she pursed her lips and pressed the handkerchief against her upturned cheeks. The corner of the mouth, "Concubine Li, you have raised 16 princesses for the emperor. You have always been meritorious, but the emperor has never rewarded you based on your merits before. I feel that I want to mention this matter to the emperor and promote you, Concubine Li, to be a virtuous concubine. What do you think? How are you?" In the plot, Concubine Li felt painful for a while after knowing that her daughter had become her husband's flesh and blood, but the mother-daughter nature allowed her to quickly forgive Hua Ziyi and finally blessed her. Regarding feelings, since Lily wants to make Hua Yuanan feel embarrassed, first of all, Concubine Ori cannot be too indifferent. She originally liked Hua Yuanan, otherwise she wouldn't have worked so hard to give birth to a daughter. It was just because she stayed in the cold palace for so long that her love for Hua Yuanan became cold. Now Lily wants to. What she did was to arouse Concubine Li's heart full of love for Hua Yuanan. Concubine Li originally felt a little uneasy when she came to the queen's palace, but when she heard Lily's words, she felt a little happy but also a little overwhelmed. She hurriedly said, "I am a concubine, I am scared." "Concubine Li, don't worry." Lily took her hand again and patted her to comfort her. "You have done a good job in giving birth to children. Now Princess 16 is married to General Helion. The Emperor will reuse General Helion in the future. You think about it, if your status is too low, won't you smear the princess in the future? You don't have to worry about this matter, I will definitely handle it for you." Hearing that her low status might harm her daughter in the future, Concubine Li hesitated for a moment. Although she still thought it was a bit weird, she agreed. After Behi sent Concubine Li away that day, she informed Hua Yuanan of her request to nominate Concubine Li. Originally, Hua Yuanan was planning to seal Hua Zai as the imperial concubine after a while. It was revealed that before he could give his sweetheart a place, Lily made a request for Concubine Li to be promoted. Concubine Li had been in the harem for a long time, and she gave birth to another child for herself. Such a satisfied daughter, now Hua Zai has become his woman half-heartedly. Hua Yuanan will definitely not let her go. Naturally, he can no longer be as ruthless to Concubine Li as before. She is just a virtuous concubine. As long as she is not, so what if he hurts that little man's mother and makes her a virtuous concubine? Hua Yuanan thought for a while and nodded in agreement. Naturally, he had to put aside the matter of naming Hua Zai the imperial concubine. Otherwise, although he didn't care, he would let Hua Zai talk to her mother. I'm afraid Hua Zai would be reluctant to designate a concubine together. Hua Yuanan couldn't help but feel a dull pain in his heart when he thought that Hua Zai would cry. As soon as he agreed, Lily was afraid that he would regret it, so she quickly gave the order. The matter of Concubine Li being promoted to the concubine was quickly prepared in full swing. By the time Hua Yuanan calmed down and regretted it, the matter had already happened. No more changes are possible. When Helianxiu went to the battlefield, he almost died on the way. He was not a fool, not to mention that he had been a man for 2 generations. Naturally, he easily knew that he had been plotted by one of his own people. He was the person he suspected was not his father-in-law Hua Yuanan. After all, he was the father who loved his wife deeply. Even though Hua Zai had been ignored by Hua Yuanan for more than 10 years, she was so kind that she did not dare to hate her father. How could he suspect Hua Yuanan in the first place? He failed to pick out the traitor while he was away on an expedition. It was only when he led the army back to Kyoto that he discovered the fact that his wife was missing. Hua Zai was the emperor's daughter. I don't know who was so bold as to dare to snatch his wife away at the emperor's feet and under the emperor's nose. Helianxiu immediately entered the palace and asked Hua Yuanan for help. But the matter did not come to fruition until he was about to go to the harem to ask for a meeting with Concubine Li. He heard that Concubine Li was visiting the queen at this time. Helianxiu remembered that the queen had secretly sent someone to invite him to a party. At first, he only thought that the queen was interested in his appearance and had dirty thoughts like those boring women in the palace, so he ignored the queen. But now, he didn't know whether he was ill and sought medical treatment. Helianxiu actually used in the name of visiting my mother-in-law, I came to the queen's palace. To be continued. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Wan Erwr. Chapter 289. This was the first time Lily saw Helianxiu except that day after he came to the palace to greet her on the second day of his wedding. This time, he no longer had the complacency he had when he was newlywed, and the rest was filled with anxiety and fear. To be able to have this man with military power, already fighting on the battlefield at a young age, and using his prestige to make other countries' cautious generals anxious like this, it shows how deep his feelings for Hua Zai are. I've seen the Empress, I've seen the Oriole concubine. Helianxiu entered the harem directly, not because it was so easy to enter Dechu's harem, but actually just because Hua Yuanan wanted to let him enter the harem today, and he let him in with his own eyes. Huazii just gave up on him, but after meeting him once, Hua Yuanan and Huazii were having a heated fight, so why did they care where Heilongzhi went? Even if he knew that he had entered the queen's palace, Hua Yuanan's arrogant character would probably not take him seriously. Now General Helion can no longer call concubine Oriole. As the emperor has said, my sister is now the virtuous concubine who has been named the first of the 4 concubines. Lily chuckled softly and glanced at Heilongzhi with a somewhat confused expression. Eccentric. Heilongzhi was stunned for a moment, and suddenly felt a bad premonition welling up in his heart. He was just on an expedition. Why would his wife disappear without a trace after he came back, while his mother-in-law was in his own house? After returning from the expedition, she was made a concubine. Although concubined is still very charming now, she is getting older after all. In a place where the harem is full of beauties, she is no longer very outstanding. Even if Lily later said that she was responsible for giving birth to the 16th princess, it is obvious that this statement Heilongzhi was not convinced. He is not really young and ignorant. He has lived 2 lives and has seen many things very clearly. There is something strange about it. His wife is missing. Logically speaking, it was a big event, but no news was revealed in the capital. This seemed very strange, especially since he had asked people in the palace after he came back, and they only said that the princess was taken back to the palace by the emperor. Maybe it was robbed by gangsters on the way back home. At first, Heilongzhi believed it was true, but now that he calmed down, he discovered something weird about it. Thinking of Lily's unusually calm attitude and meaningful words, he immediately suppressed the anxiety in his heart and glanced at Lily. After seeing her smiling and not evading, he had an idea in his mind. At midnight, Lily felt the bed next to her suddenly sinking, as if something was touching her. The surroundings were quiet, and even the palace guards on guard were not disturbed. If it hadn't been for the fact that she had been practicing martial arts for the past 6 months, you may not be able to feel the slightest movement. She turned her head to look and saw a figure with his face covered, pulling up the quilt and lying on the bed. On the other hand, he also pulled Lily down and covered their heads and faces with the quilt. Heilongzhi pulled off the cloth covering his face. Please tell the queen the whereabouts of my wife. He didn't beat around the bush and asked what Lily had wanted to tell him. The 2 of them were very close now. Lily was just about to struggle and lie further away, but Heilongzhi stretched out his hand to pull her closer, fearing that she would struggle, and finally just hugged her in his arms. So that she could no longer struggle, and then said anxiously, I have absolutely no intention of offending your majesty, I am just worried about the safety of the princess, and I beg your majesty to help me. He looked thin and slender, but he was quite strong. Lily struggled twice, and after feeling that he must have practiced martial arts and that she was no match for him, she simply stopped struggling and whispered, as early as I told you before you left for the expedition that you should come to see me, so what's the point of coming to see me now? What does the Empress mean by this? Heilongzhi was stunned for a moment when he heard this, and his tone became a little urgent. Could it be the princess? She has. Maybe in less than 2 months, your princess will become the emperor's new concubine. Lily stroked the hair on her face. She felt uncomfortable under the quilt, but the 2 of them hid in the quilt and talked. The voice will be lower, and secondly, people will not notice it. Hua Yuanan's eyes and ears are everywhere in the harem. Heilongzhi's ability to come in without alerting others actually surprised Lily. Although the 2 of them were at this moment, the position was a little awkward, but talking about serious things made Lily calm down quickly. To be honest with what the general said, I just hope to cooperate with the general now, cooperate inside and outside, just to save the lives of Hua Yudu, my mother, and my son. The general can think carefully before agreeing to me. After Lily said this, she was about to pull the phone. She took off the quilt and stood up, but Heilongzhi hugged her tightly. not allowing her to expose her head. He gritted his teeth and said, "What do you mean by this? The general may not understand." His wife was with Hua Yuanan while he was away from home. Even if Lily didn't understand this feeling, she could still understand him, especially since Heilongzhu had been with Hua Zai for 2 lifetimes and was deeply in love with him. The key is that that kind of heart is still precious. Now that I finally found it, I also married my previous lover back home. However, I found that after I went out, everything was in vain. It's no wonder that Heilongzhu's tone at the moment was cold and cold. Thinking of this, Lily stopped struggling and simply told what she knew. The emperor brought back a beauty not long after the general went on the expedition and kept her in the palace, enjoying herself day and night. To be honest with what the general said, I once risked my life to find out the news, and I know that she is Princess 16, but now people outside are still in the dark. I also heard the news. The emperor is planning to make her his concubine, and it will not take more than 6 months at the latest. General, I have deep feelings for Princess 16, and I admire her deeply. General, you can think about it, if you are willing to cooperate with me to get Princess 16 back. When Heilongzhu heard this, her whole body tensed up. Lily originally thought that he couldn't stand the stimulation of these words at this moment, and would be unbearable and impulsive to go to Hua Yuan and to argue. She had already done that. After making preparations on how to persuade Heilongzhu to calm down, and thinking about what to say, Heilongzhu was quiet for a moment and suddenly sneered. That's it, that's it? No wonder I couldn't find her. She was hidden by him. His voice was cold, with a creepy feeling. He originally hugged Lily's hand and suddenly pulled Lily away. He tightened his grip. She was like this before. I thought she was too beautiful and kind, so people couldn't help but like her. I didn't expect that she would still be like this in this new life. There are always so many people who like her, even her biological father love her too. My life is really a joke, for such a woman. The plot didn't develop like this. When Lily heard that he was obviously giving up, she couldn't help but be a little anxious. If Heilongzhu refused to cooperate with her, how could he get revenge with what he had now? Even if she could practice martial arts, Hua Yuanan would not give her that long time. That's not what the general said. Lily was no longer in a hurry to stick her head out for air. Instead, she stretched out her hand to grab Heilongzhu and said, "A night without a wife can repay 100 days of kindness. The 16th princess is your wife. How can you give up on her and the relationship between you two?" Heilongzhu remained silent and did not speak. What's more, the hatred of seizing your wife must not be forgotten. Where does the emperor put you by doing this? What's more, if I am not wrong, the emperor almost attacked you when the general was on the expedition and took your life so that he could have the 16th princess to himself. These are all hints in the plot. In order to win Hua Zai's heart, Hua Yuanan was afraid that she would not forget her love for Heilongzhu, so when she sent Heilongzhu to the expedition, she almost killed him. At this moment, Lily Yi, as expected, Heilongzhu showed some emotion after saying it. If the general is willing to cooperate with me and avenge this great revenge, all I want is to save the lives of my mother and son, as well as the Fang family. This matter is beneficial to you and me, the general. Why should the general refuse? Lily looked at him. Now that I calmed down, I couldn't help but lift the quilt a little to see his face. After this is done, maybe the entire Chu dynasty will belong to you, the general. Even if the general wants to get the princess again, it's not impossible. The Chu dynasty is under the world. Your Majesty is now the queen. Are you trying to coax me with these words? Heilongzhu was silent for a long time, and then suddenly whispered in Lily's ear, "I believe that your Majesty was ordered by the emperor. You want to trick me into the situation and take my life so openly so that the emperor can be with Hua Zai, right?" When Lily heard what he said, she naturally swore to the sky and denied it. It's absolutely impossible. To be honest with the general, I have already received the news. The emperor wants to make Huazii the imperial concubine and eliminate me to pave the way for her. I am weak Li Wei, I'll be fine if I die, but I still have a son and my mother's family, and I just want to save their lives. If the general doesn't believe it, I have something I can give to the general. When Heilongzhou heard this, she let go of Lily's hand. Lily coughed twice, straightened her clothes and sat up. She hugged Heilongzhou just out of sheer urgency. When I came back to my senses, I felt that something was not right. However, considering that I was already in my early 30s and much older than Heilongzhou, I expected that he would not have any unscrupulous thoughts towards me. After all, although Gu's body and appearance were not bad, Fang Lily's son was barely a few years younger than Heilongzhou, so she felt a little calmer. She got up on the pretext of going to the toilet, drank some water, and when she returned to bed, Lily quickly took out the box hidden in her clothes. "General, please take a look." Lily leaned over and held a pearl in her hand. Under the dim light, Heilongzhou opened the box. Inside, a fleshy worm was crawling around. The thickness of rice grains made it look quite disgusting. Heilongzhou frowned with a look of disgust on his face. "What is this?" To be continued. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Juan Erwr. Chapter 290. This is the only goo worm made by Lily after she came to this world and took advantage of her identity to collect some bugs. In the past 6 months, she has been working secretly for so long, and only one of them survived. This kind of goo insect has no ability. For ordinary people, there is no harm to the body after eating it. However, if a martial arts practitioner eats it, if you get rid of it, it will eat away the dantian and suck out the internal energy in the muscles and veins. When the martial arts practitioner becomes a useless person, this kind of insect will not live long and will die. Originally, this kind of bug had a simple function and was very easy to practice. In addition, it was not easy for people to swallow, so it was regarded as the simplest kind of bug in the southern region's voodoo arts. You want me to find a way to feed this insect to the emperor? Heilongzhou understood Lily's words and couldn't help but cover the box with numbness. At this moment, Lily had already shown that she wanted to harm the emperor. He naturally believed that Lily really hated Hua Yuanan and wanted to join forces with him to deal with him. His expression was rare and sincere. "Your Majesty, please let me think about it and I will give you an answer later." After he finished speaking, he lifted the quilt. He rolled off the foot of the bed, without giving Lily a definite answer, but got a goo worm that Lily finally cultivated and ran away quietly. When Lily came back to her senses, she realized that he hadn't mentioned anything, but she had almost revealed all her trump cards. She couldn't help but feel so upset that she almost didn't fall asleep all night. The next day, Heilongzhou's search for the 16th princess in the capital was publicized with great fanfare. If Behi had doubted that Heilongzhou didn't want to take revenge before, she felt relieved when she heard this. What Lily was afraid of was that Heilongzhou would not make trouble. After knowing the truth, he knocked out his front teeth and swallowed it. Now he's causing trouble. If one day the world knows that the wife of General Helion, who protects the family and the country, is hiding in the palace, I am afraid that the emperor will be a mouthful, and no matter how willful he acts, it will not make sense. Heilongzhou moved very quickly. For a while, the most discussed issue in the capital was the disappearance of Huazii. Lily in the palace was not idle either. She praised the former concubine Li and now the Empress De. He was so high that he was almost the most popular person in the palace for a while. It was not until half a month later that Hua Yuanan, who had always been calm and indifferent, finally couldn't wait any longer and announced that he would hold a celebration banquet for Heilongzhou, who had made military achievements this time. If Lily was not mistaken, he should be there. At the celebration banquet, he took advantage of the situation and officially unveiled his latest acquisition, Huazii. Hua Yuanan was also afraid that things would change easily if time went on for a long time. He originally planned to let the palace make preparations, but at this time, because of Heliangziu, the whole capital was almost turned upside down, and there was a lot of gossip in the palace recently. Therefore, he couldn't wait any longer and decided to get Huazii through the clear path first. As for the future, I will double the compensation for my kindness to her, and I will never treat her badly anyway. Go and invite Concubinda here. Lily thought of this, and couldn't help but feel a little pity for Concubinda in her heart. But then she thought of the tasks she had to do and what she was going to do, and her heart slowly hardened again. He got up and said, I just said that the emperor will hold a celebration banquet for General Helion tonight. Concubinda is also the mother-in-law of General Helion. Please invite her to come and pick out some jewelry. Although Concubinda is famous now, she had stayed in the cold palace for many years. Plus she was from a low background, so her net worth was not rich. It would be difficult to attend such a banquet without being so shabby as to make people laugh. Therefore, she could not avoid most of the previous banquets, or she would find a way to cover it up. But if you use it too many times, you will still be laughed at, so concubines generally don't like to participate in such banquets. The eldest palace maid took the order and went forward. Lily seemed to have changed recently, and she was no longer jealous of Hua Yuanan. The people below were surprised and disbelieving at the beginning, but then they became accustomed to it. Now no one thinks that Lily being so weird makes me think that she was born with such a good character. Concubinda was invited over, wearing an old palace dress. Recently, although Hua Yuanan thought of her because of Huazii and rewarded her several times, the rewards were mainly decorations. Or they are all things that are not suitable for wearing, so she still has to rely on Lily to help with some expenses. At this moment, Lily's intention of inviting her to come, I think the palace visitor has told her in advance, because she looked grateful. Saw Lily and bowed down, thank you for your thoughtful consideration, otherwise I would really be a little worried today. She also recently heard about the disappearance of her daughter, and she looked so sad that people couldn't help but sympathize with her. Heliangziu's celebration party for the concubine must not be avoided. After all, he is her son-in-law. When Lily asked someone to bring out the jewelry box, she was a little cautious at first, but Lily comforted her, sister, just pick it for me. You don't have to pick it for me, don't worry, my sister gave birth to a good daughter for the emperor, and I am very envious of it. I married such a man who is like a dragon or a phoenix. It's a pity that I don't have a daughter myself, otherwise I would definitely choose such a dragon-riding son-in-law for my daughter. Speaking of her son-in-law, Concubinda's face couldn't help but reveal a look of color. What she felt most proud of in her life was having such a son-in-law. She and her daughter lived in the cold palace, and no one cared about them for more than 10 years. If it weren't for Heliangzi, who fell in love with her daughter and married Huazii. Now the mother and daughter may have to die of old age in the cold palace. How can they be as prosperous as they are today? If Lily had been praising Concubinda, she might not have been so overjoyed, but Lily praised the two things that she cared about most. Naturally, Concubinda couldn't help but smile more and more joyfully. Her expression was not as restrained as before, and she carefully picked out several items. A piece of jewelry, that's all. It's getting late. It would be troublesome for my sister to go back to the palace to tidy up. I still have a few sets of newly cut clothes here that I have never worn before. My sister is still as beautiful as before. If you don't mind, choose 2 pieces for now. Put it on, wait for the emperor to give you some more fabric, and make new clothes for your sister, Lily said, and without waiting for Concubinda to refuse, someone quickly took out the clothes. These sets of palace clothes were all newly made by her according to Concubinda's preferences. Concubinda originally wanted to refuse, but when she saw the dress she liked, She swallowed it back and allowed Lily's people to serve her. Went inside, changed clothes, came out, combed her hair again, and after applying powder, she looked really radiant for a while, and her beauty was indeed still the same. After all, concubine can give birth to a daughter as beautiful as Hwazai, and she herself is not much different. Before, she was just undressed, but now with makeup, even if she is only 70% good looking, it is enough. She has become very beautiful. Lily praised her twice, which made concubine's cheeks turn red. Seeing that it was getting late, she took concubine and called the chariot all the way to the palace where the banquet was being held. At this time, the palace was already full of courtiers and female relatives. When they saw the queen leading people out, everyone met each other until all the concubines in the harem were almost there. When the banquet was about to begin, the shrill voice of the chamberlain at the back sang, "The emperor has arrived." Everyone stood up and bowed down. Hua Yuanan personally brought Hwazai together. From the corner of Lily's eyes, she saw the slight sadness on Hwazai's face and the spring between her brows, and couldn't help but wince coldly. The corner of her mouth curled up, and concubine, who was kneeling beside her, suddenly raised her head, and her body began to tremble like chaff as if struck by lightning. "Everyone is safe," Hua Yuan's somewhat cold voice sounded. After everyone thanked them, they sat down again. Hwazai followed Hua Yuanan and sat at the head of the table, showing more status than Lily, who was supposed to sit shoulder to shoulder with the emperor. A noble look. She had changed her appearance before, so although the Queen Mother had seen her on her wedding day, she had never seen her true face. Now that she saw Hwazai showing her true face, she did not recognize her. On the contrary, concubine's lips were pale and she stared at Hwazai for a long time. Her eyes showed shock first, then disbelief, and finally she bit her lips tightly, not daring to speak, but her blood was red. It quickly faded from her face. In addition to celebrating General Helian's victory today, the most important thing I want to announce is that I will be canonizing the imperial concubine Hua Yuanan took Hwazai's slightly trembling hand and announced this thing. Helianxiu, who was sitting under the seat, did not even frown when he heard this. He just showed a sinister look in his eyes. He stared at Hwazai on the stage for a long time, and his expressionless handsome face showed a bit of coldness. Killing intent comes. Concubine was forced to hold back at first, but when she heard that Hua Yuanan was going to confer Hwazai as the imperial concubine, she suddenly couldn't hold it back, coughed twice, and a mouthful of blood spurted out from her mouth. Mother, because concubine is now the head of the 4 concubines of Hua Yuanan and the mother-in-law of General Helian, who is now in the limelight. In addition, she is pulled to sit in a very conspicuous position by Queen Lily. As soon as the blood spurted out, the people below could see clearly and were shocked. What made people even more stunned was that the beautiful imperial concubine who was held in Hua Yuanan's hand was so surprised that she subconsciously called her mother. The venue suddenly became deathly quiet, and everyone was unable to recover for a moment. Only then did Helianxiu seem to react. He stood up like an arrow, with a look of shock on his face. With a look of disbelief, he subconsciously shouted, "Princess." Iking admitted the wrong person. Hua Yuanan's face suddenly turned cold, and he shouted sternly, "Helianxiu, what are your intentions when you stare at the imperial concubine that I have adopted?" A look of struggle appeared on Helianxiu's face. He clenched his fists tightly. After a while, his knees suddenly softened. He took a deep breath and knelt down. I may be dazzled. I admit my mistake, people. To be continued. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Juan ERWR. Chapter 291. There was a hint of despair and pain in Helianxiu's tone. Everyone could hear it clearly, and Hua Yuanan naturally heard it too. However, at this moment, Hua Yuanan did not notice the strange and surprised looks from others. There was only one thought going back and forth in his mind, and that was that Heilongjiu had admitted defeat. What Hua Yuanan was most unwilling to do was marry his pearl to Heilongjiu, which caused Hua Zai to have Heilongjiu in his heart. Although he was confident that he had the means to win Hua Zai's heart, forcibly expelled Heilongjiu's shadow, but he still felt a little uncomfortable in his heart, especially since Hua Zai was the first woman he fell in love with, and the woman he planned to spend the rest of his life with, so he felt a little lost. Reason. Mother? Your Majesty, this. Lily knew that this was the time for her to perform, because Heilongjiu winked at her when she fell down, and she stood up suddenly, as if she was too excited, seemingly stuttering. Hua Yuanan heard Lily speak and slapped Lily without hesitation. Hua Yuanan knew something was wrong when Hua Zai shouted the words mother, but how could he be willing to blame the person close to his heart? As long as she was willing to stay by his side, how could he be willing to blame her? Hua Yuanan was already holding back a lot of anger, and now he vented his anger on Lily. Although Lily wanted to hide when she saw Hua Yuanan taking action, she saw the people of the Fang family in the palace, and the civil and military officials in the court. Official, she wanted to put Hua Yuanan on the back of a blame that could not be cleared away. There were some things that he could not suppress with force, so she pretended to be at a loss and received the slap. A slap sounded. Although Lily was mentally prepared. But when he discovered that Hua Yuanan's angry slap actually contained inner strength, anger still surged up in her heart. She wished she could stab Hua Yuanan in the face with a knife. She summoned her inner strength to resist, rolled her body aside involuntarily, and pushed Hua Yuanan to the side. Yuanan's strength disappeared a bit, and he pressed down on the dying concubine. My queen, are you okay? Concubine was pressed so hard that she almost vomited blood again. She suppressed the anger in her heart and moved the lily away from her body. When she saw her daughter, who was tightly held by Hua Yuanan, lowered her head and wiped her tears with a pale face, she couldn't help but sneer. If Hua Yuanan hadn't been so kind to her before, which gradually stirred up her already calm heart and gradually made it uneasy, perhaps Defei wouldn't have been so hateful. But this was her husband, and she loved Hua Yuanan to begin with. Even though she and her daughter had been dependent on each other for more than 10 years, this was another piece of meat that fell out of her belly that she shouldn't hate. But at this moment, concubine couldn't help but feel resentment welling up in her heart. The daughter robbed her husband. This is simply the biggest joke in the world. Especially when he saw Heilongjiu kneeling on the stage. Obviously Hua Zai could have a better life and a better husband, but she was not satisfied and chose to steal her husband from her. If Hua Yuanan had not made her a concubine before and rewarded her with those things, the concubine felt that she was favored, and maybe she felt better in her heart, but he did this. When everyone in the harem thought that he was forgetting their old love, the actions of Hua Yuanan and Hua Zai, it was like a slap on concubine's face, making her unable to recover for a while. What mother? Is the queen awake at all now? Hua Yuanan's warning voice rang out. He looked around with his eyes, and his face was very ferocious at this moment. The civil and military ministers on the stage had already been shocked by the sudden turn of events. He was stunned, but Hua Yuanan thought it was His Majesty that shocked everyone, and he felt very satisfied. Ching, wake up. Maybe the imperial concubine is calling Sister Defei. Mother. Lily's face was already a little numb, and she deliberately shouted the word mother several times in an unclear manner, until Hua after Yuanan's face turned pale, she pretended to shout clearly and lowered her head as if she was afraid. Yes, my imperial concubine just called me empress. There is no 16th princess here, nor is there any Madame Heilongjiu. I am also tired today, so please disperse. Hua Yuanan came down from the crowd forcefully. After the official ordered him to leave the palace, he turned around and hugged Hua Zai and walked away without caring about the feelings of the people who were left behind. Lily pretended to be very scared, and then breathed a sigh of relief. The Queen Mother next to her had already been so angry that she almost fainted. Lily hurriedly asked someone to call the imperial doctor. In the chaos, the emperor, as the king of a country, they didn't care about the Queen Mother's life or death, which inevitably made the ministers somewhat dissatisfied. Regardless of whether the so-called imperial concubine just now is the real 16th princess, the emperor should not act so absurdly. He cannot decide on the canonization of the imperial concubine with just one sentence. It requires 3 provinces and 6 departments to decide and then officially choose the auspicious day of the zodiac for canonization. It shouldn't be such a child's play. What's more, the Queen Mother was so angry just now. As a son, she only covets women and has fun, which is really unfilial. The slap Hua Yuanan gave Lily just now made people see his stupidity and cruelty. Almost all the officials who could enter the palace at this time were of different status. At this moment, I felt disappointed with Hua Yuanan, and I couldn't help but feel disappointed. Then he began to feel that this emperor was really derelict in his duties, and he felt a little disgusted with Hua Yuanan. Especially if the woman around Hua Yuanan is really the 16th princess who appeared inexplicably and then suddenly disappeared, then the human relations between father and daughter cannot be ignored, and the emperor snatched the wife of a minister, especially when this person still contributed to the country. This behavior is even more embarrassing. Not long after Lily returned to the harem, she received news that someone from the Fang family had arrived. In the message that Prime Minister Fang handed her, he hoped that she would support his son Hua Yuda to take the throne and abolish Hua Yuanan. When Lily saw the note, she couldn't help but smile and threw it directly into the candle shade. Hua Yudu is not suitable to be the emperor. A person like him is greedy for pleasure and has no ambition. He is not suitable for that position. Even if the Fang family is willing to support him, it may only be in name only. The original owner's wish is just to let her preserve Hua Yudu. Yudu had only one life, and Lily was not prepared to ask for trouble and do such troublesome things, so she naturally refused at the moment. For several days in a row, the Fang family tried every means to send messages to the palace, but when the situation reached this point, Hua Yuanan seemed to have no movement at all, or he was just focusing on women at this time, and he was not interested in women. The imperial court no longer cares about the throne, or Hua Yuanan is waiting for the matter to get to the maximum so that he can deal with it. But if the matter is the former, that will be beneficial to Lily, and if the matter is the latter, then Hua Yuanan's arrogance may eventually bring him into trouble. During the evening bath, the maid who put the petals into the bath took the empty basket and went out. Among the rose petals floating on the bath, something similar in shape to the petals swelled up. Lily sighed and was about to go into the water to pick it up. At some point, an arm moved faster than hers. She reached out and picked up the strip of cloth, and whispered softly, "The situation is urgent. Now that I am no longer interested in political affairs, I will quickly take advantage of this opportunity to provide the eldest prince with the throne." "Heliangziu, you are brave." Lily's face was mostly darkened. At this moment, when she was preparing to take a bath, he appeared in the bath, because recently the Fang family often took the opportunity to send notes in order to avoid being discovered. So Lily spends most of her time alone, lest Hua Yuanan's eyes and ears come to her palace, and things may fall apart. But who would have expected that Heliangziu is not timid? At such a critical moment he not only appeared in the harem, but also dared to appear in his own palace. It was just getting dark and it was not the middle of the night. He was not afraid of being discovered. His own life would be in danger. Lily wasn't worried about whether he would die, but he couldn't let himself get hurt when he failed to complete the mission. Now that Li Yangzi was not in the starry sky, if something unexpected happened to his mission, who knew if the one in the starry sky who could transmit his mission could give him extra time? An opportunity? Thinking of this, Lily glared at him fiercely, and then realized that she was only wearing a belly band with a light silk outer cover, and her lower body was also a loose gauze skirt that could not cover her legs. Although her body was not that old, it was small, but Lily couldn't help but cover her chest first. She glanced around, and when she saw the large robe on the shelf nearby, she quickly took it and put it on, and then said with an ugly face, "What are you doing? Are you coming to my palace now?" Hyliangzhu leaned against the edge of the pool with a smile. Seeing Lily's panic, a trace of sarcasm flashed in his eyes, and then he said lazily, "I gave the bugs to Hwazai and watched her feed them to Hwayuanan. I'm doing something for you. If your bugs are as magical as you said, and your son takes over after it's done, I don't know what you're going to do. How can you thank me?" When Lily first heard that the bug had been eaten by Hwayuanan, she felt a little happy, and then asked, "Did you really eat it? Do you think I'm cheating on you? All I have to say is that we are destined to be husband and wife," and Hwazai will cry and agree to anything. When Hyliangzhu said this, the sarcasm on his face deepened. Hwayuanan is seeing she is willing to eat anything given to her. I asked her to mix it into a piece of pastry and she must have eaten it, but if it doesn't work, don't blame me for not being able to do things. Don't worry. Lily couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief when she heard that the bug was really eaten by Hwayuanan. The fact that Hwayuanan himself had martial arts was like a big mountain pressing on her heart. At this moment, Guli halfway through, she couldn't hide the relief on her face. As long as Hwayuanan eats it, just prepare troops and horses. I will discuss with the Fang family and let my father unite all the officials. As long as the capital is controlled by then, and I make a move to let my son compete for the throne, naturally the rest of the people will not be able to sit still. Once the prince's forces are lured out, they will inevitably draw out Hwayuanan. After all, the old ones always come out after beating the young ones. Even though Hwayuanan doesn't care about these sons, he still cares about his face. To be continued.